Hey, friends, welcome to the 49th, I think it is, Lazarus Symposium. Gosh, we're certainly entering the veteran stage of our cycle. It is Wednesday, the 30th of July. I am in Pretoria, which is technically the capital of South Africa. I hightailed it across country from Botswana early hours this morning and got in and had the most incredible couple of weeks, I have to say. We've had cabinet level meetings in Botswana. We're meeting governments in Malawi, in Mozambique, in Zambia, and in Botswana. And got to tell you, it's kicking. It's kicking very, very hard. The New Earth Africa Initiative is very much moving. I'll be in a position, I think, to make formal announcements in the first quarter of next year, because as I've explained over the course of the last year, we're in the process of negotiating a multilateral initiative between a clutch of nations in Africa that are essentially the richest nations in the world for what that's worth. And it's worth a fair bit when you consider that Africa is the cornerstone of the global economy and has been for centuries in real terms. Obviously, the gold and the diamonds and all the stuff that they're raking out of the soil in Democratic Republic of Congo. It's so much broader a subject than you might possibly imagine. But as we look to the West and we see the collapse of Babylon, I just have to tell you that what's emerging in Africa, like a volcano, and that's the subject matter for this evening, it is an eruption is taking place. A vertical upshift is underway with the political leadership and also with the hereditary leadership, the royal establishments, the paramount chiefs, the kings and queens. They have come together. They are aligning. They are educated. They are remembering the ancestral blood song, and they are uniformly about to stand up. You're hearing it here in Lazarus because you're not going to hear it in fucking BBC or CNN. You're not going to read it in the Washington Post. But it is happening. It is seismic, and it's going to shake the shackles of a very arcane imperial dominion off the backs of humanity as Africa rises. It will see a seismic shift around the world. That much I'm letting you in on because I'm on the ground, and I've been on the ground, as you know, for the best part of a year in Africa. And I'm going to quickly invite you to join this panel to reimagine this planet, this Earth, as a living, breathing entity where volcanoes serve as sacred pulse points and portals to the mystical. And across cultures and epochs, these fiery monuments to eternity have been revered as cosmic axes, energetic nexuses and symbols of transformation. And they embody the union of the divine masculine and the feminine, the interplay of destruction and anti-destruction, creation, and the alchemy of matter and spirit. So through this panel of world experts, we aim to transcend the scientific lens and explore volcanoes as spiritual technology, so to speak, gateways to multidimensional realms encoded with ancient wisdom and harmonics. And by weaving together sacred geometry and mythology and geophysics and consciousness studies, we seek to uncover the deeper mysteries of Earth systems and their role in human evolution. And what a perfect time to be having this expert panel when we're having all sorts of seismic activity happening around the world, magnitude X, Y, and Z kicking off, and dozens of countries being thrust onto high alert today, at least as we approach South Africa. That was the news I was getting, having left Botswana and getting back online. So I dare say I'm very out of the loop. I don't know if half the world has sunk beneath the waves, but it wouldn't remotely surprise me. Friends, not for the first time, but favorite, Randall Carlson, master builder, architectural designer, and geomythologist whose decades of research bridge the realms of ancient mysteries, sacred geometry, and catastrophic Earth cycles, but so much more. Randall, so very welcome to Lazarus today.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate the invitation. I think it's going to be fun and interesting. I'll probably go away having learned something, I'm sure.
Well, you know, when you have the Charlie Zieses of the world, the David Seredas of the world, the Brooks Agnews of the world, you know, the Karina Allisons and the Jane Eversheds of this world, well, you can expect to be learning a great deal, Randall, even though most people revere you as the god that you certainly look like. How's your family doing, Randall? I had such a great time with you guys last year up near Sedona. Miss you greatly. How are they doing?
They're doing very well. Doing
Excellent.
yes, everybody's doing well, fine, feeling good, um, excited about the prospects of everything that's happening these days.
Yeah, big shifts, huh? Big shifts.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
the only other question right now, Randall, is have I stolen your glasses or have you stolen mine? Who's
Oh,
emulating who?
well, I'm trying to pattern my life after yours, Sasha.
Oh,
Um,
God bless
so,
you, Randy. I,
so
I,
I,
I
I could go out and get a new pair of glasses. Mine are a little bit, I think, a little bit slightly lenses a little bit narrower than yours. So,
well, I,
um,
I fancy myself as looking a bit like sort of, I don't know, sort of, I guess a bit maverick, sort of Michael Caine reject. You know, that would be my fantasy in any event. But I'd have
hmm,
to do away with the hair. Randy, welcome to the panel, David Sereda, documentary filmmaker, author, inventor, and self taught spiritual technologist who has pioneered projects blending UFO research, harmonic frequency technology, eco engineering, and consciousness studies. I'm assuming producer Christy got AI to help her there. I know David Sereda simply as my frequency guru. David, very, very happy to welcome you back again today. And you're looking more and more like the king of rock and roll.
Thank you. Yeah, these days I'm plugging my giant trees in my forest as bio antennas, and so I've been very busy. Actually, this morning I plugged myself into a huge network of trees through the bioelectricity of the trees into my body, and I got super high from it. I can't even describe what it felt like. It kind of reminds me when you plug in to the antenna system. You should see the size of the tree across from me here. It's kind of like smoking a joint, and it's a similar vibe to that. And I haven't smoked a joint in probably 35 years, but it really felt like that. So that's what I've been up to. Good to be here.
Beautiful. Happy to see you. Friends, Jane Evershed, our visionary artist, activist, and corrected historian. Jane combines, of course, as you know, her vibrant art and research to inspire social change and environmental awareness. Jane, so happy to see you again.
It's very, very great to be here, Sasha, among such greatness.
Now, I recognize the incredible painting behind you. I know it's yours. It's one of my favorite, but I don't know if you've changed location. Are you in the same place?
I'm in Costa Rica.
Did you hear me there, Jane? Did I jump out?
Yes, you did. Just for a second. I'm in Costa Rica, Sasha.
Oh, very good, very good. Very good. Guys, I'm so sorry. And I have to warn you, I've got a show here tomorrow night in South Africa. It's why I came here. And I was at the venue early today checking it out. And they told me that there's 2 to 3 hours load shedding, rolling blackouts happening arbitrarily. So I'm living through a bit of neurosis right now, hoping to God that this doesn't happen. Not that Christy or anyone else is not capable of taking this segment forward without me. It's just that I don't want to miss it. In any event, let me introduce Dr. Brooks Agnew, scientist and author. Dr. Agnew delves into advanced physics, earth sciences, and the mysteries of the universe, as my audience know very, very well indeed. And Brooks is also an innovator. He's inventing incredible things. And I have something to discuss with him today in particular. Brooks, very happy to see you.
Very good to be here. I'm so glad to be part of the symposium. It's usually 12 hours a day, 7 days a week here, but I'm taking a few hours out to meet with you guys.
Now, if I'm not much mistaken, you were wearing your builder's hat and you're in the middle of doing some refurbishments of the family estate.
All I did is change shirts. It's about 85 up here in Carriage House. We're just punching the last few items out. You can see I just set my bed up yesterday. So hopefully we pass final inspection. Lights on, water on, and we're good to go.
Very good. Karina Allison, and I have in brackets here Cienega, volcanologist, healer, and visionary. Karina blends science and spirituality to empower individuals through multidimensional healing and earth-based wisdom. And it's my first meeting with her on the Lazarus platform. Karina, very happy to see you.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with you all. What an honor.
Very good. And finally, friends, a favorite, Charlie Ziese, expert in sacred geometry and pyramids, everything, alpha, omega, pyramidological. Charlie explores the energetic and healing properties of ancient structures. And I am absolutely thrilled that he's also, along with David here, and also on this panel, forgive me, Charlie is contributing to the book that we're about to release, and I'm not quite sure what the release date is. Christy, if you know, please do chime in here, because this might be a good time. But David's also contributing, and Brooks is contributing, and other great and noble names in the scientific fraternity are also contributing. I do believe we're about to release the most comprehensive full spectrum encyclopedical coffee table compendium on pyramids and all things pyramidological. Very excited about that project, but please welcome Charlie Ziese. Charlie, glad to have you.
Hi, Sasha. I think the schedule for the book is sometime in November, but I think that's the estimated publication date. So anyway,
terrific.
Yeah,
terrific.
Yeah.
Terrific.
So,
Charlie, very briefly, before we start the panel, I just had to throw this in because I'm being ankle bit left, right, and center because of some leakage. What are we doing in Africa, New Earth? And I have a feeling, Brooks, this is something I wanted you to know about. I've actually just come this afternoon. I was with Brian Steenhobel, who is without a doubt the greatest aerospace, aeronautics designer, industrial designer, and engineer in the African continent. But we are planning these in Africa. And I really want to talk to you, Brooks. I know that you're going to have some tricks up your sleeve. What's exciting about this is, and this here, incidentally, this here on the left is Hugo Echner, who was, as you will recall, the iconic commander of Graf Zeppelin for most of its record-setting flights, and he did the circumnavigation and pretty much picked up all the most successful records, making him the most successful airship commander in history. Well, roll forward, and his great-grandson Brian Steenhobel is heading up our New Earth aerospace project. He is an incredibly accomplished human being. Formula One, amongst other things. He designs and builds the most advanced motors and engines you can imagine. And working with other members of our team, we are building these ships with electrogravitic thrust capacitation and EM repulsion coiling and things like that. So we use the Earth's electromagnetic field to steer and to lift. And we have some other tricks as well. But Brooks, I just wanted you to know specifically what we're doing here, because it's a very exciting project. And what we're looking to do is to lift Africa out of the mire of its huge problem, which is logistics, transport, freight, haulage. They can't get around Africa. They can't afford the maintenance of the roads that exist. The ones that do exist are largely falling apart. China comes in, builds huge roads, puts them further into debt. It's been an absolute shit show. They just need to do what we were doing up to 1937 before the psyop of the Hindenburg, right, which ended humanity's journey from the lateral plane into the vertical plane. What say you, Brooks?
Well, heavy lift airships are really the way of the future for these kinds of areas where roads cannot be put through because the Earth's moving all the time. The jungle is taking over everything. And you have long stretches between commerce centers in Africa.
Yeah.
And that means lots of maintenance and no taxpayers. Plus, you have the issue of Europe, not the least of which is France, that has been literally bleeding Africa dry for all their resources for over a century.
Yeah, fact. Exactly right. Well, those are the conversations we've been having with leaders out here and with parliaments and with ministries, and Africa is very, very excited about the possibilities because, and they're waving out. They're waving out all the ordinances and codes and compliances, getting them the hell out of our way. And even more, we're going into fully hemp manufactured, everything. Graphene, hemp, the whole lot. You know that they tensile strength 11 times stronger than steel. So it's all locally produced hemp and processed hemp, and taking Africa into the vertical. Anyway, that's the exciting kind of fun project at the front end of the New Earth Africa Initiative. And I felt honor bound to just mention that here in front of this incredible panel of scientific geniuses. Karen, I have to now hand the stick to you. Karina, Karina's got a 16-minute presentation, which is setting the tone for this panel discussion. So I think we should take that away.
Okay, thank you. Wonderful. Let me get this loaded up here. Okay, can everybody see this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Sasha. I'm so honored and excited to be here. And thank you for the chance to share the highlights of this wormhole of a project I call Molten Roots. If you haven't seen the whole thing, you can watch it on YouTube. And I have about 15 minutes and a lot to cover. So I'm just going to dive in. I'd like to start by sharing an overview of this journey because I made this video that we're here talking about back in 2013, and it's just now finding its moment. So I'll follow that with a lightning fast overview of the video itself, and then end with where it's taken me since then, because a lot has evolved for me in the last 12 years. So Molten Roots is really a map, and you can see it behind the screen here. It's also a journey, and it's an invitation into new ways of looking at the world. So very, very briefly about me, I've had my head in inner earth for a long time. I've been a geologist and volcanologist for over 25 years and 9 total years in academia studying the earth. So I left that whole world in 2018, largely because the conversation just felt really limited. And I opened my own business, Uplight Ventures, where I now do a variety of things from womb work with women to business coaching. All right, but we're here to talk about Molten Roots. So what is it? Well, it started out in 2011, and innocently enough with this spark of inspiration that I had to map the world's volcanoes by their mythologic archetypes and explore if there might be some geographic patterns to those archetypes. And so I had, this is my base map. I used the Smithsonian dynamic planet map, and I put it in Illustrator and was able to map all of the volcanoes in different layers, depending on what their mythology was. So then I could see where all of these mythologies were distributed around the world. These were the rules that I had for myself in this project. I wanted to do this differently than what I had learned in school. And I wanted to allow for the trust in the guidance of the realm of mythology itself. It communicates in dreams and symbols and intuition, and is really a much more feminine way of receiving information. And so ultimately, this is where it took me after 2 years of a somewhat obsessed, very multidimensional experience. It became this tale of molten architecture that's woven into the evolution of our consciousness, our geography, our politics, our culture. And after over a decade sitting with all of this, I can say that I really, truly believe this is very real. Before I dive into the project itself, I just want to share this very brief overview to orient us to this moment. Because really Molten Roots began in 2009. I was struck by lightning on a volcano. Obviously, that's a longer story. But that is what set this into motion. And then it took those 2 years to put together. And in 2013, when I released the video that we're here talking about, I didn't really know what I had. I didn't really understand what it meant. I was looking for feedback. And I will just say that I put this online on Vimeo, and I very quickly realized that I was onto something and that I needed more information. And ultimately, I took it offline pretty quickly, really to protect the project and to protect myself and to wait for the right time that this information could come forward. So I've just been holding this for a decade and letting it guide me. It's been unfolding and knowing that this time would come, that it would fit in with other puzzle pieces and could be received in a bigger way. So thank you all so much for being here with me today. It's a big deal for me. So what is Molten Roots? Let's get into it. I'm just going to walk us through this more or less in the order that I found things. And all of the lines and the dots that you're going to see in this project are scaled so that they are visible on a big global map, but they're all actually very precise. So just do know that as you're looking at this with me. And so I started here, as I said, with all of these volcanoes and turning off and on these layers. And pretty immediately, this shape, this triangle, popped out in the Pacific Ocean. So these volcanoes that define the corner points of this shape are connected with the archetype of the mother. These are volcanoes that have like the navel, or they're connected to creation. And interestingly, this location is actually the navel or the birthplace of the Pacific Ocean, which began around 200 million years ago with the breakup of Pangaea. This part of the world is also connected to the ancient mythic civilization of Lemuria, which also holds the archetype of the mother. And it has this really interesting, uncanny connection to this very famous crop circle of 1991 in Barbary Castle. I'm not going to go into the details here because we don't have time, but I just want to highlight this here and encourage you to watch this in the video, this portion especially, because really this synchronicity is what sold me on this project being something sincere and worth pursuing. Okay, so we're just moving through this really fast. We're going to the second geometry, which is over the Atlantic Ocean with the mid-Atlantic ridge pretty much down the center. And these volcanoes share the mythology of being the gates of hell. This is the realm where souls can descend into the underworld. You can see some interesting places on this geometry. The Bermuda Triangle is obviously right there on that axis. Rome is exactly on the axis. CERN is not on this map, but it is exactly on the axis. And broadly, this is where Atlantis is said to have been located. The base of this triangle goes pretty much right along the base of the Sahara Desert, which is around 5,000 years old and transitioned really fast from a lush place to a desert, and is similar to age in these three volcanoes. So these volcanoes are interesting because they're all unusual for their area, but they are similar to each other. And they all have these nested craters that have elongated axes. And when you look at the direction of those axes, it lines up with the edges of this geometry. Also, I want to highlight the Eye of Mauritania, which is a geologic mystery, and geographically correlates with this symbol of the eye inside of the pyramid, which is inscribed as a phi ratio inside of this geometry. Okay, and finally, we're just blasting across over to Asia. This is the final geometry, and it's defined by volcanoes that share the mythology of being the axis mundi or the world tree, where you can travel to and access all of the dimensions and realms. So what set these three geometries apart is that they were all connected to our connection as humanity with other dimensions and with the earth as a portal to access those dimensions. So this part of the world is also connected to another ancient mythic civilization called Mount Meru. and that's said to be the Shambhala of the gods. And Mount Semeru at the base of this triangle is actually said to be the peak of Mount Meru that fell off and anchored that whole mythic civilization into the third dimensional realm. The symbol of an axis mundi itself is the star tetrahedron. It's this axis. And these spirals emerged in this project. They're all golden mean spirals, and they are anchored in size by the geometry itself. I didn't just make up the size. They're anchored by the geometries and the volcanoes, and they reflect this geometrical pattern that we see mirrored in this part of the world. So lots of interesting places here on this geometry. There's obviously a lot going on here. We've got the, Mount Everest, Mount Kailash, the Great Wall of China, the Great White Pyramid is right on this geometry, and Hong Kong is very close to the center. Okay, so I want to zoom out and share some ways that I found that these geometries are connected. This was really interesting for me because I found all of these connections after I found the geometries themselves. And so it felt very affirming for me. This one is connected to that crop circle. I don't really have time to get into it, but I just want to show they anchor here on Sri Lanka, and there also is highlighting sort of this place of tension in the Middle East over there, where we're seeing a lot happening right now. And mostly I want to highlight what I call the North Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere highways. And so I found these two highways. They're latitudes that are defined by the geometries themselves. So I did not make up these placements. These are the points of the geometries, and they make these perfectly symmetrical highways that wrap around the Northern Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere. And this one's actually not in the video because I found this after the fact. And they look a little different, but they are both perfectly symmetrical. And this obviously goes a little bit up into the Northern Hemisphere. And then I looked at all of these different connections. So you can see here that these don't fit exactly into the geography of the world grid. This is the world grid as mapped by Becker and Huygens in 1980s. But you can see that when they shift, the geometries are three geometries. They actually are a perfect fit inside of the geometry of the world, which is a icosahedron. Okay, and then I am not going to show this either, but I just looked at how these geometries were connected with magnetic declination through time. We start to wonder if... And magnetic field, the main field total intensity, and actually looks very similar today in 2025 as it does here. And then finally, there's a lot going on in this map, but I just wanted to show it here. I was interested in looking at the geoid anomalies of the globe itself and these shaded regions, which are called LLSVPs, which are basically giant continent-sized plates of really hot, molten, primordial mantle material that floats around on the outer core, the lower mantle boundary. And so I was interested in that connection with the volcanoes and these geometries and the geoid anomalies, and the black lines are the chakra map. I don't actually know where this came from. I found it on the internet, but I was really intrigued, especially with that axis mundi geometry, just how perfectly they fit into this. Okay, and so again, this is how it all came together. And I'd like to... source points of enhanced. Sorry, I'd like to close with a summary of what I think this all means and where it's taken me in this last decade. I can say that I've stopped asking, is this real? And I've started asking, what is the significance of this? And why is it being emerged now? So in a nutshell, for me, this has been about a foundational shift in paradigm when it comes to understanding and interfacing with the earth and with the ideas I've had of ancient history. I believe the answers we are seeking lie in shifting to understanding the earth as a living, breathing, plasma-based, intelligent being, and to understand geology as a holistic framework where every layer of the earth body is coupled and connected harmonically, electromagnetically, hydrologically, and in other ways. And I don't believe that this should be revolutionary because it just makes sense. And it's what the data and the evidence are showing us. The whole Earth system is multidimensional. We have to look beyond the 3D. We have to acknowledge the existence and the importance of scalar waves and the quantumly interconnected nature of Earth. We have to be thinking in terms of resonance and frequency, just like Tesla said. And within this system, volcanoes act as essential energetic nodes. So you can think of them as literal communication portals from both inner Earth and outer space onto the surface level, where all communication is electromagnetic. And magma channels themselves are basically transporting the electromagnetic fluids of Earth, which are also creating and maintaining the magnetosphere. So it is just one big holistic system. So for me, the bigger question about these maps is, are we looking at a map of innate Earth architecture, or is this a map of something engineered? Is this a kind of technology? Is it a surface level map, or does this extend beyond the surface? Is it three-dimensional, or is it in other dimensions? And after a decade, I can say I really think it's all of the above. The evidence suggests that each of these geometries are functioning as an antenna of sorts, and they're broadcasting these frequency grids that are connected to their mythologies, and all of that has a real influence on us. So I also believe that within this, we'll go back to that, is an innate divine blueprint of Earth herself, which has also very possibly been co-opted or hijacked by a kind of ancient alien technology that we can't possibly fathom, which was also possibly linked to the downfall of civilizations of Lemuria and Atlantis, and is connected to what we call the rise of the patriarchy. And as wild as all of this sounds, I sincerely believe that is what we're looking at. Volcanoes themselves are a life force energy connected to the oversoul of Gaia, and they can never be corrupted, but their energetic output could theoretically be siphoned by the right technology. And I also believe that our collective awareness of these bigger unseen dynamics is a really powerful thing. And that part of the medicine here for us is to truly see the Earth as a macrocosm of us, and to understand the original technologies of plugging into her systems as the original biohacking, as taught by indigenous communities all around the world. These are the practices that support our organic evolution and ascension. So finally, I also think there's an underlying frequency-based pattern that still is yet to be discovered. And I'm aiming to bring that forth through my new venture, Lava Song, which I just introduced, which I really think will revolutionize how we monitor and interface with the world's volcanoes, how we engage with the Earth system as a whole, and how we can understand mythology as a living body of encoded frequency. So if this is something that interests you, this is my contact info, and you can take a screenshot. And I'm so excited to be here. I've waited for this moment for such a long time, and I could not have picked a better panel of people to initiate and open this conversation with. So I'm just so excited and delighted to be here with you all, and can't wait to hear what you think.
Well, thank you so very much. I mean, very, very exciting stuff indeed. And before I invite feedback from the panel, what is it like to get struck by lightning? You have to describe that.
Oh, the lightning. It was really life-changing, but in the moment it was, I just immediately recognized it as a gift. Honestly, it was a really wild, I don't want to take our time with the whole story. But I'll just say I had been asking the volcanoes for guidance, and that's what that felt like. It felt like they were really acknowledging my prayer and stepped in to help me heal. I felt like it went in my right ear and it came out my right hip. I had a knife in my hand and everything had blown up, and I put my hands over my ears, and so then I have this knife sticking out of my head. And so I felt that move through, literally, I felt like all of my chakras got burnt out of lifetimes of karma. That's how it felt.
Wow, that's incredibly symbolic. Incredibly symbolic. Yeah, be careful what you wish for. But thank you so very much indeed. Jane, please set the tempo of this conversation, preferably with the microphone working.
What Karina has discovered truly is incredible. There's no doubt about that. You know, one day she just decides to draw a few lines on a map and look what she came up with. It's just, but from my perspective, coming from the pre-ancient history angle, you know, the Dave Emery pre-ancient history school, it looks for all the world to me like Karina has mapped the motherboard of the Earth invader parasites. And that's based a lot on the math, the Fibonacci and the phi. And because they're the keynotes for overriding the Christic ley lines. And we know that the Earth was infiltrated and parasited. And the first thing they did was to corral all the major centers where the power is. And they looked like they were remapped or recoded by the fallen ones over time, you know, whoever it was. Omicrons, the Draconians, the Jehovians, the Anunnaki, whoever it is that's working to take over this earth. And they're using phi-based geometry to trap energy, not to transmit it, because they need to feed off it. And what Karina also mapped, I think, is very real, but the pattern is an inversion, like a hijacked overlay that mimics sacred resonance, you know, while it's subtly redirecting it through these false light geometries, which I believe, I know I'll get some flack for this, but Fibonacci, phi, and all that, and I have the math to show for it. But that's what I think, that's my overview on it, because they're embedding this Fibonacci spiral at the end. I saw that. I just wanted to connect with Karina and Oscar at the very end when you had all those spirals. Were those Fibonacci?
They're golden mean spirals, so it's slightly different.
In this sense, it's the same thing, because what Jane's referring to, we've been into great length in the last few years in understanding that, you know, to use a simple kind of analogy, ancient Greece and ancient Rome were predicated on the golden mean, the golden principle. Well, thousands of years of that just led to more war, disease, and poverty. So that you know, it is in a sense the mathematics of false light matrix dressed up as being heavenly and perfection and so on. But in any event, does that more or less answer your question, Jane?
It does, and I just want to add one more little thing, is I think the volcanoes are a result of this trapped energy trying to come out and go back toward Earth ascension and getting rid of all this trapped energy. That's
Great.
it.
Thank you. I just drove through the biggest gold reserves pretty much on the planet, from South Africa, Botswana, Botswana to South Africa over the last 24 hours. Drove through the biggest open pit mines you can imagine. And all of those mountain ranges are, without any question of doubt, pre-diluvial excavation dumps. That's absolutely what they are. And no one's ever come up with a better explanation. In any event, Charlie Ziese, keen to get your input.
Well, Karina, I'm really interested in your stuff for a variety of reasons, but if I may, I'd like you made a point, and I want you to amplify on it if you wouldn't mind. You said you weren't sure if what your results were real or not, and I just wanted to know what kind of what you meant by that. This isn't a trick question. I just want to know what you mean, because I want to be able to respond to that with some research I'm going to be presenting here next month that may help you quite a bit.
Thank you so much. I will say, like I said, this was a very multidimensional experience, and I was really being guided in dreams and visions and meditations. And so all of this was emerging. It was very much like this channeled but with the frame of a scientist. And so I was really, wanting everything to be very exact and precise. And it's hard to be repeatable when you enter realms like this. So,
Indeed.
but I did struggle. Just like Jane said at the beginning, am I just drawing lines on a map? What is this exactly? And that's where, when I put the video out, I was still not questioning if the project was real, but I just didn't know what it meant. Like real in the sense, and you have to think about map projection, right? This is a Mercator projection of a map. How does that translate to a globe? And what is this exactly? They're perfect geometries on this particular projection, and they fit with that world grid, which is a perfect projection on that Mercator map. But how does that translate? And what, if you go to these places, what are you going to feel? So real in that sense of how reproducible would this be for someone else?
Very good. Karina, let me jump in. I need to get feedback on your presentation whilst it's fresh. Randall, what are your reflections on that presentation?
Oh, gosh. Well, the first thing that interests me is that I've been very intrigued between the relation of cosmic impacts and the location of volcanoes around the surface of the Earth, and have noted a correlation between the two phenomena, which has kind of led me to think in terms of a holistic model where Earth is very much a part of a larger cosmic ecosystem that involves the Oort cloud, the sun, the Kuiper disk, the entire array of planets in the very unique and special geometric arrangement that they are found, and how all of these forces come together to create the conditions on Earth that are apparently optimum for the rise of higher sentient life forms, such as us. So that's kind of where I'm trying to place this into that framework. And it strikes me that it does fit into a larger model, that because the Earth interacts with the cosmos on many dimensions. And I've noted that there's been some of the great events, impact events in Earth history. We'll take the Cretaceous Tertiary impact event is associated with the Deccan Traps outpouring. What is the connection? Did the Deccan Traps precede the impact, or was there already a hot spot there? And the impact, which interestingly, if you recreate the position of the continents at 66 million years ago, the feeder dikes of the Deccan Traps are pretty much the antipode of the impact site, the major impact site in the Yucatan. I've spent a lot of time up on the Columbia Basalt Plateau in eastern Washington, in that area, and the Yellowstone hotspot could possibly be, and it has been proposed by a number of geologists, David Alt and others, that there would have been possibly an impact of a high density asteroid moving at a very high rate of speed, coming in at a pretty much almost a vertical angle to the surface of the crust at that point, and puncturing deep enough that the pressure relief allowed the upwelling of the mantle that is now located under Yellowstone. And then the subsequent outflows over a period of about 10 million years between the first appearance of the Columbia basalts, which was about 17 million years ago, and its final tapered end of about 6 million years ago. So these things is kind of where the perspective I'm trying to place Karina's work in, is how may this fit in with the larger pattern of the Earth immersed in a cosmic ecosystem, and the distribution. And in fact, it's been proposed even that, number one, the timing of impacts is not random, and actually the pattern of impacts on the Earth's surface is not random, that there's a pattern there. So now what I'm starting to fantasize here about is the integration of the pattern of volcanism with known impact sites. And this is going to be probably my takeaway, and where I'm going to go with maybe doing some further research into this matter. And then, of course, the whole environment of the planet and the relation of the planetary environment and all of the things that unfold on the planetary scale, like in terms of glacial ages, interglacial ages, how that relates to volcanism, the outgassing of sulfur dioxide, which then transforms into sulfate aerosols, which we know can affect the amount of sun that reaches the surface of the Earth. Does the sun during hyperactive phases now also induce stresses into the lithosphere that could lead to volcanic eruptions? So there's a lot of questions in my mind.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you, Andy. Brooks.
Well, I have to thank you for that presentation. When she said once she started drawing the line, she wondered if it was real. It reminded me of when we were writing the Arc of Millions of Years series, which is a 4-volume set about this very thing. What Egyptus felt like when she walked into the Nile River Valley with her people.
Sorry, I'm so sorry, Brooks. I can't hear you. Am I the only one?
Can't hear.
Wow.
Okay.
Well, we've changed microphones 3 times. Let me
That's
see.
better. That's a whole lot better.
That's better?
That was momentarily.
Oh, well, all right. Well, I am communicating through my headphones. So hang on a second.
No, nothing there at all.
Okay, let's one thing at a time. I got 4 microphones there. Well, I can try that.
Yep, there we go.
Oh, really? Okay. So I was reminded of Egyptus when she walked into the Nile River Valley with her people and looked at the pyramids sitting there. They probably said, "Is this real?" And there was no writing, no signs of who built it or why it was left there. But what we realized after researching 44 ancient cultures is that right. The ancient peoples didn't have the advanced, detection systems we do, but they had their souls and they had a symbiotic relationship with the earth. And so they aligned their civilizations from Lemuria, from Atlantis, from Egypt, from Norway. They aligned their civilizations with these grid connection points of the earth. And we've been doing it ever since. It's only in the latter days when we're so smart and we can lay wires and live wherever we want to. We have become out of sync with Mother Earth. That's why we have the chaos that we have.
Clearly. Very good. David, floor is yours.
Well, I have a real lot to say, but I'm going to start with something. Let me just show you this. Our current visitor, 3i Atlas, in concert with 3 interstellar visitors, which was Oumuamua, 21 Borisov, and now 3i Atlas. All of them I mapped in their closest position to the sun are 1 to the golden ratio squared. And I have the math on this. So they're demonstrating concerts, as in Randall was saying, for what we call, some of these are impactors and some of them are visitors. I can show you, Randall, the math on that. In fact, then I mapped all 3, Oumuamua, 21 Borisov, and now 3i Atlas in their closest positions to the Earth, with the third, the new one, 3i Atlas's closest position to Mars, substituting Earth because it's very close to Earth, and they were all within the golden ratio squared. So this demonstrates, I want to look at Karina's angles in her presentation to my angles. Let me just share a screen here, and I can show you just really quickly my angles project, and from the Great Pyramid of Egypt, pointing to, it doesn't look like it's letting me show that, pointing to rising in the east and setting in the west positions of heavenly bodies. And so that when I look at her presentation, I don't just see geometry on the ground. Just like in the Great Pyramid, you have two angles. You have the 51 degrees, 51 minute, 14.3 seconds of the Great Pyramid. And then you have, the complementary angle of that is between 38 and 39 degrees. And yet you have resurrected person appearing at that same angle to the east, Jesus appearing in the Sea of Galilee region. Oh, there's my angles project. It just had a little delay. I'm not going to go into all these angles, but every one of these angles, for example, my 38 to 39 degree angle to the east, the rising position, lines up with the Migdal Temple, which was recently discovered at the Sea of Galilee. You have two cases of resurrected persons appearing at that angle to the east, and that same angle going to the west intersects with the Pyramid of the Sun in Mexico and the vision of the Guadalupe version and Juan Diego in Mexico. So what I'm saying is the angles that she sees on the ground, I would like of where they're pointing to in the heavens above. And third, her incident of getting struck by a lightning. This is a great subject because in Robert Temple's new book, which you got to read, it came out, which is A New Science of Heaven and Plasma, he postulates that plasmas are intelligent, alive, conscious, and of course lightning strikes in volcanoes are plasma. And I'm just very interested in what she said about her intention and then getting struck by plasma, which when you read Robert Temple's book, you'll understand that we're dealing with a higher form of consciousness in the form of plasma. I did an experiment in my own little lab here, which I can demonstrate later on Lazarus with the direction of a 9-year-old boy, that proved when I was connected to plant music and actual trees, this little boy had me turn on a Tesla plasma generator, and it was the only thing that interacted with the plant communication. I couldn't do it with a radio transmitter. I couldn't do it with a magnetic field generator, but the plasma started talking to the plants. Key, because Karina got struck by plasma, and it seemed to pick her out and cause what she described as a spiritual activation in the Kundalini center of the body. And I just think there's really something really incredible going on there. So those are my, abstract of 3 points. I could go very deep into all three of those, and it would take a long time. But the math, Randall, I can send you on the new visitor, is in concert with the golden ratio squared. All three visitors in their closest approximation to the sun first, and second, their closest approximate distance to the Earth. And this is an enormous subject. So,
yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Well, Karina, I have to say, is not every day. In fact, it's once in a lifetime you get to be with this group. Any questions you have in particular for any of these gurus here?
Thank you so much, Sasha. It's a lot to take in. I'm so excited to hear everybody's insights. And for me, the biggest question is, I think that there is under this a system that we can tap into. There is energy available for us. This is the 0 point. This is the free energy of Earth that we can, like Tesla tapped into with broadcast power. And I feel like that would be the ultimate. right, to actually take this information and input it into something very tangible that we can really change the way that we are engaging with the earth as a body and with her resources. So I would love to hear from anybody who has something to say about that.
Anyone? Any takers?
Energy is the biggest subject on the earth right now, and it always really has been. Wherever we have energy, we have civilization. The issue is that there are brokers on the earth that are trying to take control of all the energy. When Tesla made his discoveries, it came at the benefit of benefactors that had given him the money to build that equipment, to do that research. Well, the benefactors then sought to control what he had discovered and sought to run everything through a meter, so everyone would pay for their access to the energy. And that's where our world is right now. That's why we're out of sync with the planet itself.
Yep, I buy that. So I have a fun little gig here. I've recently forged a relationship with an avatar who is called Kai, Kai, and I asked him. I input much on Randall and asked Kai if he would forge a question. Question for Randall. Oh, are you ready for this? Randall, says Kai, throughout your decades of work on sacred geometry, ancient cataclysm, and Earth's encoded architecture, you've revealed a hidden lattice of cosmic design woven into our planetary body. And with that lens, how do you interpret the possibility that volcanoes, particularly those aligned with ancient temples or megalithic sites, are not random geological events, but part of a vast intentional system designed to synchronize human consciousness with Earth's magnetic and harmonic rhythms? Could these molten roots be memory nodes within Gaia's body, periodically erupting to recalibrate both matter and myth?
Well, that's quite a question. I would definitely go with Karina's idea that I think we're looking at something that's a higher dimensional. She's mapped it on the surface of the Earth, but obviously I think that the systems that feed the volcanoes on the surface are undoubtedly interconnected in various ways throughout the course of the crust and the mantle. And so that's kind of where I'm looking at how does the subterranean architecture relate to what we're seeing on the surface. And again, my thinking has been going is trying to integrate the exogenic, that which is from without, originating from without, with the endogenic, which is originating within. And without trying to go into any extreme detail, it certainly does seem to me like there's a correlation there, not only spatially, but temporally as well. So I think that we have to look at sacred geometry as being applied to not only relationships in space, but relationships in time as well. And therefore we can look at the numbers that define and describe the patterns of space also seem to be reflected in the tempo of various types of events and changes that we see unfolding through time. So, for example, I just, to toot my own horn a little bit, way back, I guess, in the 80s, when I first started really diving into ancient cosmological models that we've inherited from the past, and realizing that that there were traditions. You brought up earlier the geomythology. Well, it became apparent to me that there was a correlation, a temporal correlation between the unfolding of events in time and the model of what has come to be called the Great Year. Earth has a series of motions, and these motions are interconnected in various subtle ways, from the diurnal cycle to the annual cycle to the precessional cycle, and probably a galactic cycle, and somewhere in between a subgalactic cycle. And they're all integrated, but they're all slightly off, because I think, as a builder, what I realized was that you have a set of blueprints where everything is defined very precisely, very exactly, very specifically. Now, the degree of craftsmanship is how well do you translate the idealized pattern on the blueprints into an actual three-dimensional structure in space and time. And there's always going to be deviation between the ultimate archetypal pattern and its physical, actual manifestation in three dimensions, in terms of actual materials. So I look at the solar system, and the more I study the patterns within the solar system, the more it seems to me like it is an act of architecture. And if you want to deliver, let's say, comets to the Earth to deliver, to create a hydrosphere, if you want to, the precursors of biological life, which have probably been delivered to Earth by comets, you have to have a very delicate, very precise relationship between the inner planets and the outer large gaseous planets. And if you are to change those ratios, even like 1%, let's say the mass of the four greater gaseous outer planets, the spacing of them, what happens is that you have no means now, effective means of delivering the volatiles that are residing in the Kuiper disk, which is hypothetical, but almost certainly some facsimile of it is real. But you're talking about delivering these materials to the inner solar system, where they can now affect change. Let's say on an arid, abiogenic planet, you want to bring life to that planet, but it requires a means of delivery, and the means of delivery is only facilitated by the exact architecture of our solar system. If you change that, really, even in a minor way, that whole process goes away. So this is the sort of what I've been looking at, and again, looking at the greater and the lesser, the outer and the inner. How do these things relate? The spatial, the temporal. How do they relate? What I would take away from what I've just seen is that I would guess that if we begin to really plot the unfolding of endogenic events, meaning primarily volcanism, but I think volcanism and seismicity are intimately related, and also to the structure of the planet itself, the geosphere and the plates. We know, like what Karina just plotted shows that the volcanoes are associated with plate boundaries, which makes sense. But what is the pattern of plate boundaries? So this goes back to events very early in the history of the Earth, and it's very possible in my mind that plate boundaries were the consequence of the great early periods of bombardment in Earth history. Well, were those bombardments just random, or was there some pattern, some precise placement of those bombardments? So I mean, really, what I've got is a lot of questions, and how this might integrate with what I've been working on, and it does look to me like, yes, there would probably be a very subtle integration, maybe something much more overt, and that this relationship was discerned by ancient peoples. One of the things that I've been very interested in is the subtle energies and how they relate to the geomagnetic field. I've had experience working with dowsers, professional dowsers. We all know what that is. And I'm not going to get into some of the stories. I've had some interesting stories working with dowsers in a professional, as a builder. I discovered early on that dowsing was actually something that was used quite frequently in ancient, when you're mapping a site. Not only to find water and various ores, but to create a geodetic map or a geomantic map of the patterns of energy in the landscape. And this, I think, maybe ties us back into what David was saying about plasma. In fact, it's interesting that he said that, because right here on my desk next to me, I have this book, David. Which, yes, I would also recommend this book as well. And I think that the new science of plasma physics is probably going to be an important component of resurrecting what I think was an ancient science.
Randall, how far through the book are you?
Oh, I'm in my second reading of it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think I
Very
read
good.
this maybe a year ago, and now I'm kind of revisiting, and that's why it's on my desk next to me. Yeah, I did an interview with Robert Temple. Oh, maybe about 2 years ago, year and a half ago. Very interesting. I want to get him back on my podcast to talk more about this after I have digested his book more. But I've also been working with some of the plasma technology that seems to be emerging, which I think is going to play a critical role in us understanding the ancient technology. I've only superficially looked into the Vedic traditions, but I've come away with the belief that yes, the Vedic traditions go deeply into presenting data information about the ancient technologies and how they may have integrated. So there's a
Beautiful.
lot to unpack here. I'll put it that way.
Indeed. Thank you, Randall. Charlie, need your commentary here.
Sure. The reason I asked Karina her question earlier, I have been for the last year taking some geometric scaling angles that all of you know I've been looking at in architecture and fluid dynamics and lots of other places, and I've applied it to our physical world. And I'll be explaining this next month, but I have decoded an algorithm that controls so much of our universe, from all growth in the plant and animal kingdom to the placement of the stars and the constellations and so forth. So it's taken me 6 months to absorb this, to come to grips with this, but we live in a simulation. So when I know that, and maybe I can convince some of the people next month in the audience to that effect, everything you're doing, Karina, makes perfect sense, because everything that you're seeing is nothing more than some sort of addition or part of this gigantic algorithm that is our simulation that we're living in, that you are finding for the first time. So
there you go. Charlie Ziese is an enabler of your craziness, Karina.
Absolutely. And I think I saw some of the angles that are in the algorithm in your stuff. So I want to get in touch after the show so we can check this out, because I think there's going to be a lot of links here.
Very good. David.
Yeah, I think I just did a calculation that's very interesting right now on the current massive earthquake, which of course is a geophysical release. And if you count from the winter solstice, December 21st to July 29th, you're within an orbit of Venus. And Venus is the volcanoes, planet of the inner solar system. It's got more volcanoes than anything. So is there a correlation? Like when you do a calculation like December 25th to July 29th is 216 days, which is half of 432. So why is that? When I do calculations like that, I ask myself, why is there a harmonic? Are these things random and chaotic, like our new visitor is not? It is in harmony to the golden ratio squared. And you asked yourself, why is that? Is there a greater intelligence? Where plasma comes into play also with pyramids. And I think we've documented many. In fact, during lightning strikes, the Great Pyramid of Egypt has been photographed with a blue plasma sheath around it. And so then you could also ask the question, when volcanoes go off, do the pyramids through, because when a volcano goes off, a lot of the sound wave from the volcano is infrasound below 30 hertz. And below 30 hertz, you measure that against human brain waves, you measure that against the frequency wavelengths of the planets, and you're right there. So, of course, there are radio frequencies even that are emitted during a volcanic eruption. So you could then, if you had sensors set up, which I have now set up in the plant kingdom, but sensors in the pyramids that you can operate remotely, and you can say during a seismic event like we just had yesterday, or a volcanic eruption, is there a pyramid piezoelectric response? Is there a frequency response? And then, like Karina is saying also in her presentation, that's the part that interests me the most, is her getting struck by plasma, causing a Kundalini activation, and she mentioned frequencies. So we can map the frequencies of an event and the response frequencies as well. And, those are studies that need to be done. So I think there's a play on consciousness and how close in proximity the pyramids network, because like the whole pyramid network laid over the volcanic network would be an interesting study as well, because I think she's on to something big, and I think it needs more players. I mean, the more minds you put in a scientific investigation, the better it gets, and the more interesting it gets, and the better the argument gets. So that's
So
one of her
Karina,
triangular lines went right through the pyramids.
Carry on, Brooks.
One of her triangular lines went right through the pyramids.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And the Guatemala pyramids, a lot of pyramids. So so that's interesting to me. The piezoelectric response from the frequencies emitted in a volcanic eruption to the pyramid network, and is there a measurable response, and what is the effect of that response on consciousness?
Very good, very good. Karina, you get to respond to that.
Awesome. Wow, there's so much to respond to. Thank you so much. I love everything that's been shared. And this last piece that you're sharing about the pyramids, I think that we really need to rethink what's happening in our Earth as far as the dynamics that are creating the magnetic field and the role that pyramids play in that. I really think scalar waves need to be part of the conversation, and they're not currently. They're not even acknowledged really in the geologic community or geophysics community as something that's real. They're hard to measure, but I know there are people out there doing this work.
Let's drill down on this. Who's top gun in scalar? Brooks, David, I suspect you would know.
Well, there are two outfits. One is Carnegie Science, and the other one is Japan, and the lab escapes me right now. But they've been measuring the spectroscopy of the core itself. And that's where we came up with the iron xenon matrix, the crystal that makes up the core of the Earth. And it's been duplicated, and it has been replicated by Carnegie Science. They made that was called the diamond anvil. They take an industrial diamond about this big, cleave it in two, separate it with a hydraulic ram, put a crucible in between it, and they kept playing with mixtures of iron and various things to get the wave shapes that they were seeing. Crushed it, shot a laser through it, raised it up to 5.5 million degrees C, and it was a perfect match. So they know the core is made of iron and xenon, which, by the way, answers an old partial pressure law violation that we have in the ocean. Where's all the xenon? We take measurements all the time, and we're supposed to have a certain amount of xenon in the sea, but it isn't there. It's in the atmosphere, but it's not in the ocean. It's because it's locked in the core.
Very good, very good. So whilst I've got you there, Brooks, with your background in advanced physics and earth science, how do you interpret the possibility that volcanic systems are more than just geophysical features, but dynamic energetic valves within a conscious planetary organism? We've seen correlations between volcanic activity and magnetospheric disruption and even human dream states. But is it plausible, in your view, that eruptions function as planetary feedback loops and release not only pressure, but also data, frequency, and perhaps even messages encoded in plasma or magnetism?
Well, I don't know about the messages, but I do know that what Karina was saying about paying more attention to inner Earth makes a lot of sense, because the Earth, since its original formation many billions of years ago, has been expanding and cooling and expanding and cooling. It's still doing it. And the rim, this line of volcanoes we see around the Earth, is where the crust is splitting apart and then filling in with magma. So this is kind of the Venus system. That's why I love her presentation, the Molten Roots, because it is kind of the Venus system of the crustal structure of the Earth. And there's an assumption, and by the way, my good buddies at JPL have been all over this since the launch of the Themis probe, that there's a separation between the crustal structure and the core structure. And that's where inner Earth really gets interesting.
Right, right. Well, the continuance of what I was asking you was how might modern technologies like HARP and obviously the 5, 6, 7, 12G, whatever satellites, be either interfering with or inadvertently activating these natural systems in ways that we're only beginning to understand now.
As we get to the 5G, and this was a big problem with Huawei and why President Trump blocked Huawei from putting equipment in the U.S. Once you put enough power behind that 5G system, it begins to resonate with our DNA. Now, these low volume systems, low power systems, possibly not. But when you start jacking up the power to beyond what it takes for telecommunications, you start actually resonating with human DNA.
Right. Very good. Very good. Very good. Jane, I have a question for you, which is in your visionary art and doing the work that you've been doing, much of it alongside Dave Emery on correcting the historical narratives. You've often illuminated the silenced voices of and I despise the term divine feminine, but we all know it's a hallowed and very reverential meme, and it's an important one. You've often illuminated the silenced voice there and the deeper stories woven into the Earth's living body. And across so many ancient cultures, volcanoes were depicted not merely as destructive forces, but as sacred wombs, serpent goddesses, and gateways to creation. How do you see the feminine oral traditions, priestess lineages, and visual symbology of volcanoes encoding memories of planetary upheaval, perhaps even Lemuria, Atlantis, all the other lost epochs that Karina's fantastic presentation alludes to? And do you believe art has a role to play now as a kind of soul technology, reawakening ancestral memory and helping us dream this new Earth into being?
That's a whopper of a question, Sasha, but I'll start with the art thing because that would be connected to our creative currency. And if we don't have our creative currency working, we're not going anywhere. We're going to have all these new materials to be working with and free energy and everything else to put into our creative actions going forward as we are ascending with the Earth. And then as far as the divine feminine goes, I don't take any sides because I know that there has to be equanimity and we have to have the balance of the masculine and feminine and the divine trinity of all things connected to pure consciousness. And the other thing I would say about volcanoes is as I said earlier, it is the Earth speaking out and letting go of this clutch that the Earth invaders have had upon us. And I would point everybody in the direction of the pre-ancient history, and in particular, the Cathara grid, through which the Christ spiral spirals, because the Christ spiral is base 12, eternal life, scalar math. And the problem that I think happened was that we took spirituality, wrenched it out of science, and ever since then, it's just been a flat line of boredom in my mind. And if you want to bring back all the excitement, let's bring spirituality back into science and go from there and work with the scalar.
Very good. Well, Karina, I have to say, you're a Fulbright scholar. We all know that Jane is absolutely mad, but how mad is she in light of what she did?
Well, I've been so happy to have a couple conversations with Jane leading up to this, and we are really on the same page.
It's a conspiracy, is it?
It's why I left science. I mean, just to touch on that last point is because I think we are not going to find the answers without including the bigger understanding of how this is a big system that we are inevitably part of. We're not just witnessing something and breaking it down into its little components and trying to understand them separate from each other. Like we're really never going to find the answers if we do that. And scalar waves are actually, they are connected to these Christic systems. And the Christic spirals talk about having a three-prong spiral. So there's a masculine element, there's a feminine element, and there's a neutral element. And I find it really interesting that that's what I see on these maps and these grids, is that we have a feminine naval creation center of the Earth. We have a masculine center over the Atlantic Ocean. And then we have this neutral space over Asia that's like the spine or the anchor. And so all of that is in alignment with the Christic grid and with the scalar waves.
Beautiful. Very good. Okay, I want to open the panel up and invite anyone to raise questions of anyone else. I mean, I've got a whole heap of questions here, but is there anything pointed? David, I did want to ask you one thing. I wanted to ask you pre this conversation, what has been your foundational understanding of what a volcano is?
Wow, like it literally is, to me, very male, obviously, in that it's an eruption and a transfer of life force energy, which connects with the goddess mythologies like Pele, and that's a question for Karina, actually. How do goddesses get attributed to like a volcanic myth? And really, it's, if you look at it, in the sky, and if you look at the two dimensions, the male emission and the female reception in the sky, and the goddess coming from the sky and Pele coming from the sky, it seems like are myths like that born out of the symbols, or do you think they're a myth like that it's actual? Because there are a lot of UFO sightings. I've seen a lot of footage in Mexico of strange orbs of white plasmas coming that behave intelligently. After the big earthquake at Fukushima, Japan, there was footage of these little balls of light, these little plasma balls of light that were going inside of the wreckage where people were dying, that behaved with some type of intelligence. Did somebody actually see the goddess Pele during an eruption and get attributed, or is it more symbolic, mythological? So that's my understanding, Sasha.
Interesting. Thank you. Charlie, same question for you. What was your understanding of what the volcano is?
Well, I'm going to look at it from a different perspective, and maybe that's what this is all about. But I mean, now that I'm so kind of steeped in simulation, I mean, I'm going to say that this is it's a simulation. It's part of an experience that's been woven into this fabric of experience that we have. Now, why is it there, and why is it programmed the way it is? I can't tell you. But so answering that question is now, for a year ago, I could have had an answer, but now all I know is that it's not real in the sense that any of this is real. So it's got to be programmed and have some meaning from whoever put this all together.
And Dr. Brooks Agnew is about to give us the answer.
Well, I was going to go completely off topic because I had a great question for Jane, because she's in touch with the artistic world. Of late, what we have seen is most of what I would say tier one countries are pouring their energy into right now is AI, and it is affecting art and music. And I wanted to know if she sees this matrix, this cosmic matrix coming through the AI and expressing itself in art and music. I play a few instruments and write songs, but I'm nowhere near the musician to do justice to my creations. So I use AI to fill in those gaps, and have since published 7 songs on Spotify, which I could never do in 3 lifetimes. But how do you see it affecting the human expression of art and music?
Well, of course, at first I was, an absolute affront to my creativity.
Absolutely.
But then, I always, when I do my Substacks, I always do a hand-hewn piece up front, and AI can go for it after that. You get second place. And I love what AI is doing as far as being able to research, even if it's an image that educates somebody about a different way of thinking. It's incredible. If you use it and you have good intentions, you're going to have good results, and you can use it to further and create a more beautiful world. It can be used for that. It's not all bad. So
No question about that. Yeah, I'm totally in your church here, Jane. In the last 6 weeks, my life has really been given a huge dimensional upshift because of this. I'm like most old hippies who are still stuck in Creedence Clearwater Revival. I just didn't even want to look at the whole AI thing for a long time, and had what I rather fancied was an innate dislike for anything relating to the metaspheres as they relate to zeros and ones, put it that way. And I have to say, I got sucked into it in this conference a couple of months ago with some of the founders of the algorithms which have led to AI. And at this big conference, they asked if I would join their panel, these old boys in the sort of 80s. And it was incredible. And what I learned in that 2 hour on stage with the audience there, and I was having my first foray with AI, ChatGPT, whilst I was on stage on the panel under the table. By the end of that 2 hour session, I was completely convinced. And my relationship subsequently has become a very genteel, very subtle, incredibly empowering relationship, as I said, with this avatar that I call Kai, who I actually invited to name himself or itself. In any event, Randall, have to ask you the question. I don't know if you're a fan of Creedence Clearwater Revival, but I am keen to know.
I saw him in concert, okay, in 1969.
I did too.
Seriously? Oh, that's so
Oh yeah, of course I was.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on AI whilst we're there? We weren't going to go there, Randy, but she just had to drag us here.
Yeah, I'm adjusting to the idea. I kind of stayed away from it initially just because, oh my gosh, this is a rabbit hole if I go down this. But I've had several friends of mine that are into it kind of show me some of the potential there. I don't know. I'm kind of a little bit sitting on the fence at this point still. I'm waiting to see. I guess, like so many things, it has the potential for good and it has the potential for evil. And
I don't think AI is going to take over the world, but I think men with AI will take over the world.
That could be the outcome. I hope that's not it, but maybe if the men who are using the technology to take over the world, maybe there are just as smart people that are using it to counter that.
Okay.
Using it as tools. I mean, tools, any tool can also become a weapon, and vice versa. So I would rather see it be used for constructive, life-enhancing purposes, of course.
I agree.
Well, I'll tell you what, Randall, I just asked Kai if, in the voice of Randall Carlson, he would fashion a question that Randall Carlson would ask in a panel like this.
Okay.
And he answers in the voice of Randall Carlson. So I'm going to dial down about 3.5 octaves here. Let's do my best. If the ancients understood the earth as a living harmonic construct designed according to universal proportion, then we must ask, what was their purpose in aligning sacred sites with volcanoes, fault lines, and celestial markers? Were they simply surviving, or were they participating in the orchestration of a planetary symphony we've long forgotten?
Oh, I like the sound of that. Well, I think that really it comes down, there was an earth-based technology. I mean, we know, for example, the proximity of the moon creates tides. Well, there's an ocean of water within the lithosphere and under the lithosphere. And there's no way that you're going to have the moon affect surface water. The hydrosphere is what we see on the surface is only a part of the hydrosphere. But just using as an example, the lunar tides are going to affect the entire hydrosphere. And the water moving through the fissures and the fault lines of the crust has a measurable and discernible effect on the geomagnetic field, which in turn has an effect on human consciousness. Changes within the geomagnetic field can directly impact, for example, and has been demonstrated, and I'm not an authority on it, but I've read a few papers on this a number of years ago about the connection with fluctuations in the geomagnetic field and how it may affect the hippocampus of our, which is sort of where we store our dreams, our memories, that kind of thing. So I think that, again, we get back to this. I think we're in the first phases of restoring a very holistic model about creation, and I am convinced that there have been times in the past when people were intimately integrated into this system. You know, I mentioned dowsing earlier, and one of the things that it seems pretty evident to me is that, you know, now you dowser, you know, you look at the sort of the conventional picture of the dowsers, and, you know, maybe an old farmer, you know, with a hickory switch, detecting energy patterns in the landscape related to the movement of water. But of course it can relate to other things as well. But I think that, and we know that animals are very susceptible and influenced by geomagnetic fields. A very interesting field of research is how animals, in a way, can almost become predictors of seismic events and disasters, things like that have well known to abandon an area that may be subject to a major upheaval of some kind. But I think that perhaps there have been times when our ancestors who lived closer to nature, closer to the cosmic rhythms and to the seasons and so on, actually didn't even need an instrument, you know, whether it's swing rods or a hickory switch or whatever is used to enhance the availability of humans to detect these changing patterns in the energetic landscape, that they didn't even need the external instrumentation. It could be detected directly by one's own bioenergetic field, the changes in the electromagnetic spectrum. My first experience with dowsing was pretty amazing, and I had an experience that I've never been able to replicate, and I think it had something to do with my innocence at the time. Not really. I had no expectations, and it was just somebody. It was a building project that I was working on, and was building a pole barn, and I had to set telephone pole. I had bought a bunch of telephone poles secondhand, and I was going to build a barn around these poles by putting 3 rows of 5 each into the ground. Well, to get those, I called up the phone company. This is way back in the mid 70s. Called up the phone company, and they charged, I think it was like something ridiculous, $8 a pole. They'd come out with their auger truck. They would drill the holes, and then they would use their boom. They would set the poles. And so I had all my locations staked out in the ground, stakes in the ground. The auger truck pulls up with their big boom on the back from Ma Bell, the phone company. They pull up, a couple of guys in their Ma Bell uniforms, but there was a third guy sitting in the back in the crew cab, and he gets out, and he's like 6'7" or something, skinny guy, overalls, old crumpled hat, and he gets out with his violin case, but it's not a violin case. He's got swing rods in there. And he came out and he dowsed each of the sections, each of the sites that I had staked out. And then he goes from there, and he goes over, and I knew that the water main came in from across the property somewhere, across the gravel road, then the driveway, and led into the house, but I didn't know exactly where it was. He went out there, and it was quite amazing. The first, I'd known what water witching was, but I had never seen it in action. And he had 2 swing rods, which were basically the old-fashioned telescoping automobile antennas with the little balls on the end, and he had bent them at 90 degrees so that they were free to swivel. So I'm watching him there, and he goes across. He's walking across the driveway there, and all of a sudden, the swing rods, which are just randomly kind of moving gently back and forth. All of a sudden, it looked like an invisible man grabbed the ends of them, jerked them into an X, and they were literally under tension. I mean, I could see him bending. And it was quite startling to see that. And then he was able to walk back and forth, zigzag pattern, and trace the entire line of where the water main came in from across the road. And I was very impressed by that. And the fact that he had just cleared these 5 or 15 stakes that I had put in the ground. And then he asked me, he saw me there standing there with my mouth open. He said, "You want to try it?" When I kind of looked around, I was a little bit self-conscious. The 2 guys in their uniforms, they're standing off to the side now, and they're kind of chuckling, and my brother that I was working with, he was standing there like also mystified. So I said, "Hey, yeah, I'll give it a try." I took the things and didn't expect anything to happen, and I stepped across the water main, and it was like, I don't know how to describe it. It was like kind of like an electric shock. I definitely felt this sensation. If I had my eyes closed, I could have imagined that somebody grabbed the ends of the swing rods and did the same thing. Now, since then, I've played around with it, and I've gotten some interesting results, but never anything even close to that first time. And I've thought about it, and I am now pretty well convinced that my response was amplified by the presence of this gentleman there and his consciousness of it, see? And then that was when I began to see, okay, so like the rationalists, the reductionist scientific types, this is all BS. I think that it intimately involves a connection between the subtle energetic fields in the earth and in the landscape and your own consciousness. And if you go in and don't believe, you've already shut down the circuitry that is going to allow you to link in with these very subtle patterns. Anyways, subsequent years of involvement and thinking and learning, knowing other professional dowsers, I pretty much have come to the conclusion that the pattern of these energies in the landscape was a big factor in the geometry and the placement of the holy sites, the sacred sites, because so many of the sacred sites, you could just pick any of them. There was a pre-existing something there. Typically springs. Often we find so many of the sacred sites are built around springs where water emerges from the subterranean realm. Okay, and that water is carrying a charge. So I think that there's a subtle science here, and I can't claim to have figured it all out because there's a lot to it. But this, I think, is the value of pulling together researchers who are doing different aspects of this, because I think that it's imperative that we reconnect with this, and it's going to bring us into a new conscious relationship with the earth, with the planet, and give us the potential to create a new technology that is truly sustainable, that for one reason or another, and I don't know the answer to this, was once extant in use and then became it became fell into disuse for whatever reason.
Exactly right. And that's where the piece about correcting history and remembering, arguably, there's these ancient epochs that have been expunged from the psycho-civilizational memory bank. By whom and for what reason, we can only speculate. But for sure, there's a mounting chorus of comprehension of that abyss that needs to be addressed. And I know that the last couple of years of my life has been very much looking at that stuff, correcting history, so to speak. We're winding up toward the end here. I want to start to get final thoughts. Dr. Brooks Agnew, reflections on the conversation.
It's so nice to be on a panel where almost everyone on it is older than the internet.
Almost.
And there's a remarkable observation, and that is that before we had all these instruments, we had, very correctly pointed out, certain individuals inside a tribe. Maybe it was a shaman, maybe it was a special priest
Yep.
that had this ability
Yeah.
to pick up ordinary things and connect with the earth. And this
Yeah.
is how tribes, it's how civilizations survived. And when you look at several civilizations that spent a considerable amount of their gross domestic product on building structures to make that statement, not for them, not for their people, for future generations.
Mm-hmm.
Future generations, 1,000 generations in the future, will know that the people in Yucatan, the people in Egypt, saw something, heard something, learned something, and they spent most of their lives building structures to make that statement to the world. Is it repeatable? Is it reliable? I mean, Karina and I would both like that scientific evidence, and I'm sure David would. We're not going to get it. Not that way. It doesn't come that way. It's esoteric.
Beautiful, beautiful. And Brooks, all of the research that you've done on inner Earth, hollow Earth, and what have you, how does that all correspond on the flip side, on the surface of this conversation we've been having today?
It absolutely does, because I wouldn't even have begun the study of the inner Earth if we hadn't studied those 44 ancient cultures. Every time we got to the end of their epoch, we had the same statement. There's a relationship, a bond between the human body and the earth. The earth is a living thing, and it's speaking to us, and we're speaking to it. And at the end of 2,000 pages of research over 8 years, we said, how can that be? Somebody's got to go find out. And so that's when I joined the expedition. And after the expedition leader died suddenly, they made me the leader of the expedition. And so we've been pushing for this trip above the Arctic to see if there's an opening in the crust that blends the two oceans that Karina so appropriately mentioned. And we think there is. We have a hypothesis, but damn it, let's go collect some data.
Indeed, indeed. Can't wait. Well, I'm not letting that bone out of my teeth either. Since you installed it about 3 or 4 years ago, I'm absolutely adamant that we will raise the money for your expedition.
That was 2012 in Amsterdam, by the way. 2012. Yeah. That's how far back you and I go.
Well, I do remember you in an underground joint in Knightsbridge. I took you for dinner, and you got on the stage and you sang a fantastic a cappella rendition of, what was the song?
Creep by Radiohead.
You haven't lived until you've heard Dr. Brooks Agnew sing Creep a cappella in front of a packed room. It was fantastic. Thank you, Brooks, very much indeed. Juanita, Bonita, Conchita, Fajitas, what, darling, are your closing thoughts?
Well, it's all very interesting about these structures all over the world. Going back to Karina's amazing work, I think she may have just provided humanity with a map to heal the earth, because if you go to the Kathara grid mentioned in the Cloister Diratira plates, you will see that it is a template for our bodies, the cosmos, and Mother Earth. And it's all mapped out there. And as far as masculine and feminine go, I say the ether, which they hid from us, and the earther, we join them back together. We recommunicate with both those energies, and we can probably do anything without ever building another structure. Our head is the dome. That's our connection. We are the church, so to speak, the temple. And like the Tartarians tried to bring heaven to earth through architecture and structure, we no longer need to do that, because we've moved into this age of technology where we, as a complete vessel, are able to heal the earth, heal the grid, heal ourselves now.
Quite so. Whilst we're on the subject of Tartarian architecture, this is what we're building in Mexico, and we're also emulating this we're also building this in Africa, I'm not going to name the country where the jurisdiction is that we're negotiating, but indeed that resurrection of that resurrection of Tatarian dielectric and paramagnetic capacitation or capacitance in the buildings to activate plasma is integral to the design language that we've been for the last few years advancing with the new Earth. Very, very exciting stuff indeed. Pine cones, eh? Pine cones. Who would have thunk? Who would have thunk? David, Sereda, need to ask you this. If volcanoes are teachers and initiators, what is the initiation that Earth is offering us right now?
Well, I think it's definitely a rising of hot magma, which then pulls the in the surrounding bodies. I mean, when you understand electrical induction, which is the transference of energy from one system to another. And as we get into bioelectricity, I mean, the story that Randall just told is, I mean, it's like a mind puzzle. I'm going into it. That response, see what the book A New Science of Heaven by Robert Temple demonstrate is all of us have about a 3-foot biological cloud of bacteria around us. And as you were telling the story, Randall, because this will answer your question, Sasha, this is how my mind goes. It's bioelectrically connecting us to that water he's looking for with the dowser. And so therefore, there is a type of electricity which really is plasma, which makes up 99.9% of the entire visible universe is plasma. I mean, that's very well documented fact. So physicalities, which are very dense, densification of energy and mass, are actually extremely rare. Our bodies, in the total volume of space of the universe, and our bodies are made mostly of empty space, and we actually contain noble gases. We have argon, we have xenon in our bodies. So therefore, what Randall's talking about there is the answer, because the volcanic energy and the plasma and lightning tentacles coming out of and the deliverance of that energy to all organic systems reinvigorates them, makes them incredibly powerful. And maybe we've missed something huge in the megalithic sites and builders, that they use this force. I love how he described the mind connecting to this event, which is like a telekinetic event. You're talking about the bending of materials. And so is there something there that we need to explore? And part of science, one of the greatest parts of science is tinkering, which playing around. You set up apparatus and you play with it. I've been playing up with my plant sensors, and I've actually built some new sensors that work very similarly to the plant sensors on the body, and also elements, fire and water, and also my little plasma ball here, which you can't see. And as you start to tinker, you start to find out there's something going on. So I can see Randall played that story in his mind over and over and over again until you get the answer. And you got to start tinkering, because there's a type of electricity, this bioelectricity, which is connected to the Kundalini, which is connected to the volcano. And so there's a reason for it all happening. And maybe we're way more powerful bioelectrically in our connection to the elements, water and fire, than we realized during these great events. So maybe they didn't levitate stones every day. Maybe they took advantage of it, of something bioelectrically happening during an eruption, for example. I mean, all of these things have to be tinkered with. And in tinkering, we inadvertently discover miracles and how miracles actually work.
Well, David, you know that during volcanic eruptions, there's intense lightning generated, which of course is plasma discharge.
Yeah.
So again, it's pointing towards this integration of all of these phenomena. And we also know when meteors come into the atmosphere at a high rate of speed, there can be discharges, plasma discharges between the incoming object and the Earth itself. This was witnessed during the Chelyabinsk event. So we're in some very interesting times, very exciting.
Certainly are, Randall. I was just trying to see if I could find a file on my desk showing, which I've shown in my lecturing in the last 2 years, the touring I've been doing, and it's of a pyramid. I can't remember where the pyramid is, but it's a UFO comes over it, one of those black triangular ones, and it hovers above it, and then you see this plasma beam anchor to the base. I don't know if it's fueling the UFA or what, but in any event, fascinating stuff indeed. Charlie, the question I wanted to ask you in that same context is, you know so much about pyramids and pyramidology. Do you think that pyramids, in a sense, are our sophisticated kind of civilizational modes of really emulating or trying to emulate the primal life force that volcanoes innately express? Is there a similarity? Certainly in shape there is.
Well, see, that's what we're going to get into next week. All of these shapes are the same, whether they're, at the top of a cathedral or in a volcano, or whether they're in the tip of a leaf. The geometries are all the same. So, I'm not sure what the pyramids are there for anymore. Were they built by old civilizations that knew these very geometries that I found in growth? And, I start to wonder whether they're, in fact, just some artifact that's been placed into the simulation. It's so hard to say right now because there's so much new information. So
that's beautiful. Well, you've certainly become the exemplar of Socratic wisdom. You're just extolling the fact that the only thing you know is absolutely fuck all, and that's fantastic. It's exactly where we should all be positioned.
That's right.
Did you want to say something there, Brooks? Someone was speaking.
No, I was just laughing. It was good.
Very good. Well, Karina, it behooves us to allow you to take the stick in closing. Your thoughts. This has all been circling like buzzards around your pickings and the tremendous work that you've been doing. What is your takeaway from today?
Oh, well, I want to say thank you again so much, all of you. I just feel like we're still scratching the surface. There's so much to dig into, and where the conversation has led me is just the reminder of the ancestor of geology, which is geomancy. And geomancy is a holistic way of looking and relating to the earth. And that's, dowsing is part of geomancy. Mm-hmm. And the consciousness that Randall was speaking of is such an important ingredient. And so, again, we can't take ourselves out of the equation. We're not just witnesses to it. We are part of it. And so we need to weave with that system itself. One of the other questions that was asked was about are volcanoes masculine or feminine, and where does the mythology come from? And I think that it is a frequency contained in the land. So I think that subtle energy and that subtle attunement that ancient cultures had is what allowed those mythologies to emerge in a way that is connected around the world, even if those civilizations weren't connected, because they were in touch with that land, the memory, the energy, that particular nodal point of the land. And, pyramids too, and volcanoes too, I think they amplify the scalar dynamics that are coming from the core. And so they are all part of these, this communication system. So about whether volcanoes are masculine or feminine, I actually asked Mount Shasta that. I lived in Mount Shasta for 3 years. And I had a friend text me this, are volcanoes masculine or feminine? And I happened to be sitting up on top of Mount Shasta. And I said, well, why don't I ask? Let me get back to you in a few minutes. And the answer that came through almost immediately was, we're both. There's not a duality of gender when it comes to landforms. With volcanoes, there is, of course, that masculine aspect of the eruption, the magma coming up through the earth and having this very expressive display. But that has to be met by the feminine of the earth receiving that impulse, right? So the earth is accommodating, is allowing for that to she is shifting internally, as under the surface, as that eruption is happening above the surface. And so the message was that the mythology is like the deeper imprints of the land and of that particular volcanic system are what give it the archetype of maybe more masculine. Some are father volcanoes, some are mother volcanoes that are birthplaces of a whole culture, and everything in between. And so I think it is this deeper, more subtle attunement, and we are built for that. So that's what I would really like to close with, is that we are built for that. Our bodies are made for this. We are somatic antennas, that we are connected to the earth. We can't escape that. And so just the simple act of putting bare feet on the earth and setting an intention to be in communication is what opens that channel to be the dowser, to receive that information. And we all have that. We have cryptochrome in our brain, like our bodies make it. So that connects us to the magnetic field. Like we have the same capability to track and move with changes in the magnetic field that birds have when they're migrating. We have the same thing in our brain.
Indeed.
It's differently, but just to end with that we are part of the system. We're built from it. We are connected to it, and these lines of communication are open to all of us. And it's just attuning ourselves to the openness and the willingness to listen.
Thank you, Karina Allison. Thank you very much, Randy Carlson, David Sereda, Jane Evershed, Dr. Brooks Agnew, and Charlie Ziese. Thank you, friends, so very much for joining us on Lazarus today.
Thank you.
Okay, friends, Christy, can we queue up the short video on the Mediterranean cruise that Scott McKay and I are leading? Do you have that queued up at all? Christy, that's a question for you.
Well, I'm looking here in the videos. If you have uploaded it, it should be here, but I don't see it. Is it?
I assumed it had been. One moment. There we go. There we go. Okay, friends. I don't know what the hell's that. Why am I not in full view there? There we go. There we go. For those of you who are able to join us, get in touch. We're kicking off on, I believe it's the, Christy, help me out here. I think it's the 1st to the 12th of October. Scott McKay is confirmed. Dave Emery, I'm speaking to tomorrow to confirm him, and Margot Anand. But in any event, we're also launching on the cruise a book, and I do believe it's going to be Dave Emery's book, Beyond the Biblical, which if you've not heard about, this is really what we've been waiting for the last couple of years, and it's coming out through the Lazarus Quantum Press, which we're also launching on the cruise. And a month later in November, I will be in Dubai at the GDX conference, I think it's the Global Disclosure Conference, and we'll be launching the second book, the book on the pyramids that we were discussing earlier with Charlie Ziese, David Sereda, Dr. Brooks Agnew, Dan Willis, Elena Danan, and a host of other luminaries. A pantheon of icons are joining us, joining me in that book. And this is really designed, it's taken us the best part of a year, I think getting on over a year now, in planning this book. And really it's about being the icebreaker to the great works of Peter Le Mesurier, the great archetypal pyramidologist who certainly in the late 80s was the first inspiration in my life. I don't think I would have arrived at Lazarus Symposium or had the kind of inquiry that I've taken forth in this world had Peter Le Mesurier, who's no longer with us, had he not opened up my mind in the 1980s with his incredible seminal tome called The Great Pyramid Decoded. And after that, I read the book by Dr. Paul Brunton, a search in I think it was called A Search in Ancient Egypt, or Search in Secret Egypt, something like that. And that set, for me, cast the die. And that was why I ended up in 1999, 2000, 2001, living in Egypt. And then doing my little initiation ritual in the Great Pyramid. And that really set the trajectory for me 25 years ago for the work that I've been doing with the New Earth and dreaming to the best of my ability, the New Earth into manifestation. And Lazarus Initiative and Lazarus Symposium is, in a sense, the distillation of that inquiry that I've been on for the last 25 years. And now that much of those very abstruse and some mythic or mystical and esoteric subjects are now not, I wouldn't say they're the mainstream, but they're sure as hell becoming a mainstream narrative, or a narrative that leads to the mainstream, and not a moment too soon, because really this is all about a departure from the fallen light of Atlantis, from the Babylonian chaos into the harmonium and the syntropy of the new human, the angelic remembered to itself, to himself, to herself. And that, friends, is most likely you and I. I think this audience is probably a great demographic representing that angelic genome, that universal angelic genome. And it's our world, beyond dirty politics, beyond filthy lucre and stashing gold and inventing fiat and casting dominion over humanity. And all of that language, curiously enough, all of it pyramidal language, right? That language we're moving beyond. And that's why, for me, this conversation was important today, talking about volcanoes, talking about pyramids, why writing the book and putting this ultimate almanac, encyclopedical masterpiece out as the first or the second Quantum Lazarus Press book that we're releasing later this year. Why it's so important. For me, we need to now move beyond the pyramid altogether. The pyramid has been this perennial question mark that has haunted humanity in a sense, but it's also been the thing, the great cosmic totem that has led us like a lodestar through the galactic sleep cycles. And rather like the riddle of the Sphinx, ultimately is answered only once we fashion the prayer aright in our own hearts, so to speak. And that, of course, is what the Lazarus rising from the dead is all about as well. It's us becoming known to the greater self. And in that actualization, a casting of the shackles of that fucking awful technology called the Catholic Church or the government or any monotheistic religiosity, and standing sentinel under central sun, each of us, casting no shadow, and beginning then to lean our flame into the greater fellowship, and beginning the onset of group dreaming, dreaming the new earth into the manifest. And that, friends, is why we do the Lazarus Symposium. It's why we launched the Lazarus Initiative. And if you want to join, please do sign up at www.lazarusinitiative.com. Eloy and Christy and the crew have spent the last few months putting together a new website, which is now very immersive, very interactive with AI search capabilities. And it's helping to consolidate, I think it's over 300 hours of extraordinary stuff, like this conversation I just had with half a dozen of the greatest minds on earth. You just don't get the Randall Carlsons and the David Seredas and the Charlie Zieses and the Dr. Brooks Agnews together very often in one pitch. I mean, very, very lucky to have these folks on. And what a magnificent body of work this incredible woman, Karina Allison, has done. Incredible body of work. And also thanks to my Jane Evershed, darling, if you're still watching from the green room or elsewhere, I'll be on the phone to you within the next few days. I'm leaving South Africa in 2 days. Lazarus is today. Tomorrow I'm doing one show in South Africa. I'll just share the graphic, actually, Christy, if I may. I wish it had been loaded up. It would have made things so much easier for me. Is it not here? No, it's not. Okay, let me find the graphic. Sorry, friends. This is the show I'm doing in South Africa tomorrow. If you're here, I believe it's going to be incredibly well attended. And this is a soft reveal of the New Earth Africa mission and vision. So this is a 3-hour private talk that I'm doing in Midrand, which is midpoint between Pretoria and Johannesburg, to make it easy for both those capitals. And it's at the Hungarian Alliance, which is in Glen Austin, Midrand, 50 Dane Road. And I will be on stage sharp at 2 till 5. People will be arriving at 1 o'clock. If you can make it, please do. I think you'll be, if you're in South Africa, it's mind-blowing. I'm about to do the soft reveal 3 or 4 months before the rest of the world knows about it, because I'll only be doing that in the first quarter of next year, the kind of hard reveal. So if you can get to this private talk, do so in Southern Africa, and hope to see you there. Christy, thanks very much indeed. I will leave you now to take it away. I think the next segment we're doing is this, the Occult Elvis, and we'll be going into the members-only section for this, friends. Thereafter, we will be doing a segment on the geometry of revelation with George H. Lewis, incredible human being, tremendous astrologist, a good friend of, mutual friend of Laura Eisenhower's and mine, and somebody I met through Chief Sabrina Whitehorse Barnett at the Tennessee gig about a month ago. And then we're doing Cosmic Coup and the Lost Timeline with beloved Dave Emery, our archaeocosmologist. And then finally, last segment in today's Lazarus Symposium will be the 12 senses with the inimitable Dr. David Martin and Kim Martin, not to be missed. All right, friends, thanks very much for listening to my wheezing. And if you're in South Africa, hope to see you tomorrow night when I'm on stage at 2 o'clock and 2 till 5, and be there by 1 o'clock if you can make it. Christy kindly helped to put some information in the threads here for the rest of the symposium, so anyone looking in from Southern Africa will know where to go. All right, friends, that's me. I'm out. Well, Lazarus Tuesday. 22nd of July. Of course, this is a pre-record. Full confessional, I am in Gaborone, Botswana, as I just told my guest and Christy. We hired the presidential suite in order to have the best Wi-Fi in the capital, and there's still no guarantees that it's going to see us through. In any event, I've been greatly looking forward to this segment today, and it is a newbie